Human. What's your name? It's Good morning, dear friends. Am I audible? Which is a plug, of course, for the Audible story listening app. Good morning to those of you joining on YouTube and Facebook. Nice of you to be here too. Come and join us on Zoom, where the conversation happens. I'm Robert Beatty. I'm broadcasting from the Portland Insight Meditation Community West in my tent in backyard Beaverton. How nice of you to all appear again. This is getting to be kind of a habit. It's very cool. So, the elegant teachings of the Buddha are what guide us, and I'm going to start today with another Mary Oliver poem, and then when the meditation's finished, I'm going to share, I'm told they're called a dharmet, a very short dharma talk, but it's one of my favorites. It's on the progression of awakening, starting from the crazed neurotic mind all the way to full enlightenment. And I have a diagram that I created some years ago, and we'll do just the first step of that today, which will take about 5 minutes. But it may put some things into really good context for you. So, it's not quite summer, but this poem is called The Summer Day. Mary Oliver. A person who knew the ways of the world and the ways of words and love. So from Mary Oliver, who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down into the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last, and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? What is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Where shall we direct our lives to go? What will our values be? Where can we possibly take refuge in a world so full of change and instability? One vocabulary for refuge comes from the Buddhism. I take refuge in the Dharma and being awake, in the Buddha rather, into being awake. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way things are. And I take refuge in the community of practice and the community of life. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. And now, starting our day with dessert, with the best part of the day, we get to stop and sit. And we do this in fine company. The company of friends who see fit, who see importance in gathering together and in coming home to the present moment. And this present moment could be filled with anything. What's the mood that you're experiencing right now? It could be one of great intimacy and togetherness and a sense of belonging to the world, or it could be a kind of alienation and wishing things were different. And what's happening in your body? Come home to the life which is your body. We take it very for granted and spend most of our time lost in mind and achievement. But here it is, your faithful vehicle that's carried you through life since the moment of your conception. Breathing in and breathing out. And let your breath breathe itself. It doesn't need help. Just as your body maintains temperature and blood pressure, and it digests food and does a million things, it also breathes. And it's quite likely that there will be some wandering mind, maybe a lot of wandering mind. Let us just settle back into this moment. And come home to the breath. Climb into the breath as you might climb into a hammock. Each breath has a beginning. Be present for that beginning. Each breath has a rising to fullness. The chest and abdomen expand. And then there's a moment when breathing in ceases, and then there's breathing out. Sometimes following breathing out, there's a period of quiet, a period of resting. When that's the case, awareness can simply rest in spaciousness, or you might become aware of the life in the hands or the legs, or simply remain present. The mind may be visited in this moment by the 5 hindrances, either one at a time or in packs. There could be wanting something, desire. So this moment is inadequate. I want something else to be happening, or the mind is chewing on something, leaning into the future for something. Or there is the opposite, aversion, disliking, hatred, where the mind is striking at something. It wants something not to exist. Or it could be restless and agitated and worried or filled with remorse, where there's no peacefulness. Or it could be dull and sleepy, sloth and torpor mind. Or it could be colored with doubt, despair, dispiritedness. Or there could be squalls or storms of emotions, all the way from giddy excitement to depression and sadness, anger, fear. These are all very natural, normal visitors. we learn to love them, meaning that we learn to have space for them. And they all do the dance of beginning, having a lifetime, and ending. So when you can, come back to breathing, living, abiding here in the present moment, with this breath in and this breath out. How intimately can awareness dance with the breath? How fully alive dare we to be? Coming down from the clouds of wandering mind and fantasies, hopes and fears, coming into direct contact with the fact of a body that sits and breathes, and those very thoughts and fears and hopes and plans as mental objects, as something to witness, to observe. In Stephen Levine's words, accepting the healing we took birth for. When sounds come to the ear, we notice hearing. It's a wonderful moment when we discover that sounds don't have to disturb us. Sounds sing the same song as everything else. I have a beginning, I have a lifetime, I have an ending. The same truth is shining at us brilliantly in every moment. And we rest in this very moment. the meditation of life in the present moment actually has no duration. We could say, I'm going to meditate for half an hour or an hour. But what's the real experience? It's always just what's happening right now. It's this moment. And this capacity of living now is such a blessing because it frees us from the past and future. It allows us to set our course right now for this moment and the moment that follows. We create the conditions. What am I going to do with my one wild and precious life? I want to take refuge in the Buddha and be awake. Awake to know what's really happening. And to be able to act in harmony with my friends on the journey. On the one hand, we attune ourselves with the mystery of the infinite vastness of our being. With that which never was born, never will die. On the other hand, we come to love this being who lives a lifetime, who has had challenges and successes, and health and sickness, and pleasure and pain. And so on this other polarity, why not wish yourself well now? Don't forget that really potent mantra, I love you, with your name at the end. The past is a class of thoughts that exist in the present moment. So we recreate our history again and again when we think about it. Why not recreate it with a part of you that can revisit times of hurt and injury and imagine being there in great love for yourself? I love you with your name at the end. Know that you can hold your own hand when you were 2 and 5 and 7 and 9. I'm here for you. Whatever it is that you've always needed and longed to hear, why not provide it? and looking into the future of today. Is there something you're looking forward to? Why not plan on being particularly awake and alive and really enjoy whatever pleasures come to you today? And if there's nothing planned that would be pleasant, why not rethink the day? What is it that I plan to do with my one wild and precious life? There will only be one today. Maybe another time to sit, or a chance to go for a walk or a run, or a long soak in a bubble bath, or whatever would be for you pleasant. As we become more aware in our meditation, we do become more aware of the unpleasant. But along with that, why not enjoy life's gifts more than you ever have? And now allowing the eyes to become full of life. Let them roll around inside their closed eyelids. And then notice the intention. Intentions are so important. Notice the intention to open them, and then let the mystery of sight of objects happen. Whenever you open your eyes, let it be a fresh awakening to what's seen. And then maybe a little stretching. There was a time not so many years ago when stretching was, I'm going to become more flexible, and now it's, I think I'll regain what I lost since yesterday. Hello, beautiful people. Thank you for showing up on my magic screen here. So, by way of announcements, I want to do this. If you're finding these broadcasts, this one and the others, the other teachers at PIMC, useful, I invite you to go here, donate here, support your Dharma Center. And I don't think it'll continue on if I change screens, and if you'd like to, you could find the donation button for this gathering, or just the general one. And there's this practice of generosity in which we open our hands and we say, I have enough, I'll share. And that's one of the pillars of our practice. So I invite you to support PIMC, and in particular, if you want to make a monthly contribution, that stabilizes everything. Also to invite you, Jim is here. There's Jim. Jim does a Monday evening gathering that you could tune in on. All the links for all the different teachers are there on the website, and tons more. You can get lost in the website for long periods of time. In fact, there are links to Dharma talks on the PIMC website. If you started following them and listening or watching Dharma talks, you could watch Dharma talks for the rest of your life by people who've been practicing for at least 30 to 35 years, and you'd never have a free moment. So I don't recommend that. I'd say pick and choose, but it's pretty amazing. I had another announcement. What was it? What do you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? I think that's the real announcement. I feel very quiet this morning. Not sure what's going on with my sleep. I was awake again at 3:30 and got up and sat for a long time, and I don't feel particularly tired. It's just an odd thing that's going on. All right, I'm going to share my screen, and let me see if this will work. Where'd it go? Oh yeah, here it is. I want to go to this for a moment. I've loved this kind of image for decades, and this little droplet here I think of as, when it's personal, it's me, or it's you. It's this drop. A drop came down from above, hit the water, surface tension fired it back up again like this, and for a little while this little droplet exists. And you know what it does? It sings, I, me, mine, mine. I have to save for retirement. Oh no, something's going to happen to, etc., etc. And what this drop forgets is plop. So coming back here and then going back in one more time. I wonder, actually, so Lauren, could you tell me, am I on this page with setting out on our inner journey? Yes. Okay. Does it move when I move? Does that move? It does. Oh, great. All right. So setting out on the inner journey. At some point in our lives, if we're fortunate, usually it comes with a 2x4 on the forehead, some big disappointment. We turn inside. And we begin to look at what's happening, and we discover that there's dukkha. There is unsatisfactoriness. There's the suffering that can arise with birth, sickness, old age, decay, and death. And so we use various coping mechanisms to avoid that, with like intoxication and consumption, constantly staying and thinking. But we discover an untrained, chaotic mind driven by instinct. And so if we're fortunate, we fall into a tradition that provides us with a meditation object. And that could be the breath, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity, or other things. In other religious traditions, there are prayer contemplations and mantras. But one way or another, we decide, I need to train my mind. I'm going to train my mind, because it seems as though that's where a lot of suffering comes from. And the first layer of obstacles we run into are the 5 hindrances. Now, the hindrances are not bad or wrong. They're just what we have naturally as conditioned mammals, and with a human overlay. Quite literally, the neocortex overlays the mammalian and reptilian brain. So what are these hindrances, these things that pull us away from being in the present? They're sensual desire, aversion and ill will, all the way to hatred, restlessness, agitation, and worry, sloth and torpor, dullness, and skeptical doubt. And I mentioned those in the meditation. And one of the, let's see if I can shrink this a little. Nope. It's really worthwhile having the 5 hindrances memorized, so that when you come to meditation and you can hardly find your breath, we up-level the game, and instead of using the breath as our meditation object, let's say there's a lot of restlessness, agitation, and worry. Then we shift to the very fact of restlessness, agitation, and worry, and that becomes our meditation object. And so we're in contact with reality in the present moment, and we can, because we can categorize them, we can get a better view of them to a degree. We can see what's really happening. So I think that's all I want to say today. The diagram goes up, the 7 enlightenment factors, but this is the coming attractions. The 5 hindrances are very foundational. Many people, maybe most people, quit meditation. If all they have is, I'm going to try to be with my breath and I'm failing, then why would you persist? But if you're trying to come to your breath or some other primary training object and you're failing, if you can up level and notice, well, there's something else happening, and I can become very interested in what that is. So I'm going to leave this, boink, come back here. Yes, it's worked. I'm so impressed with the technology at the moment. Thank you, Tim. That was funny. So I'm going to open up now. How is it for you on day 478 of COVID hiding out at home? Please just unmute yourself and speak when it's the right moment.
Robert, this is Lois.
I hear a voice, very faint. Hi. Oh, hi, Lauren.
Good morning. I wonder if you could comment on, I'm very interested in the 5 hindrances. In any one, like, that's really my question. What does that mean?
You know, you're very faint at this end. If maybe you could lean in a bit.
Yeah, my question is, could you comment on very interested in the 5 hindrances? What you mean by that?
Well, let's say I come to my meditation seat and I can hardly find my breath. What's going on? And it might be worry. Oh, there's a lot of worry. I can't find my breath because I'm concerned about what's happening in Washington and the shortage of PPE, or some family member is sick, and the mind is churning on that. If I know that's what's happening, I can then turn toward the churning and the suffering of that churning and actually embrace that. And then there's the experience of the capacity to observe what's happening rather than unconsciously being it. Or let's say I'm angry. Let's say my personality, one of the ways I deflect against vulnerability is that I'm angry and irritable much of the time. At some point in a person's meditation, that personality costume will start to become visible, and then you realize, good grief, every time I come to meditate, there's a lot of criticism of someone, or there's harshness, and then that begins to become an object rather than my personality. So the hindrances are of utmost importance, and we use them. It was Chogyam Trungpa who said the hindrances are not a problem, they are the manure of our awakening. Is that making sense? And they can become, it's the thing I really like about why I really like meditation is it's all about me. And is there anyone more interesting to me than me? No, of course not. So, however, it's an interest in how the personality runs. Or another really important, crucially important piece of work with the hindrances is to notice doubt. I have another shorthand for doubt, which is the practice killer. That if a person is practicing on their own, doubt will come along for sure someday in sufficient intensity that you won't continue. Because it's just a part of us. That's Mara in his doubt form. Now, that's probably not true after a certain point in practice, but certainly is true for many people at the beginning. And the same sloth and torpor dullness. I'm sitting, falling asleep. Now that can be really interesting too. What's happening? Because I, master of my mind, decide I'm going to stay awake and be present here, and then boink, gone, and then back. What does that teach us about the self and its impermanence? It's a shocking discovery. It's just not solid. Helpful? Thanks.
Robert, it's Wally.
Wally. Hello, Wally.
Hello. A number of years ago in practice, when I first learned about the 5 hindrances, I decided I'd try to note them as they arose while meditating. So if I had a worry thought, noting anxiety, noting worry. If I started falling asleep whilst meditating, note sloth and torpor, and pop, and then, or noting doubt. That finally went away pretty quickly after doing this a lot. But it worked really well for me for a couple of years, actually.
Yeah, noting can be really helpful, and also there can be multiple hindrance attacks. They can come. You can have anger with restlessness, or fear with any of them.
Right, and I noticed that they went away. You know, I mean, the thought, if I noted it as sloth and torpor, I woke up a little better.
Mm-hmm.
If I noted it as anxiety or, worry, my mind would settle. Then it would come back, but it could note it again and it would go away.
Thank you, Wally. I noticed had a hand raised.
Yes, I do too.
Hello, Had.
Hello, Had. I'm off. Bye.
Can't hear you, Had. Let me see if I can unmute you. Here we go. There you are. You're good to go.
All right, I've been doing this via YouTube for the past week, where there are 2 to 5 people, and there's a chat conversation, but it's not. It's just a delight to be in this group this morning. As a window to whatever cyber dharma hall we are in, and as a few of you know, I'm quite active with the brain injury community, and I'm formulating a website to teach basic insight meditation to fellow folks with brain injury. So if anybody has any concerns there, please contact me. And I'm actively working with Cerebellum and Bakery. I'm not actually baking now. We are doing weekend work where we teach people with brain injury to learn job skills in Malt River Village at the Cerebellum Bakery, and we're on break right now. A few people are baking. That's complex, so I don't want to go into all the details, but bringing mindfulness to action, to work, to teaching us what to do with this one precious life, because we still got it, even though we happen to be in a life that something happened to us. We got brain injury, and now learning to live successfully with that. So I'm praising the mindfulness practice and trying to forward it.
Yay! Thanks for tuning in, Had. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Morning, Robert.
It's Gail. Hi.
Hi. So, what came up for me on this was number 5, which is the sensual hindrance, and how I interpret that is that all our senses are connected with sensual, if that's what you mean by the definition. And then I'm thinking about pleasure, and I love to cook new recipes and tasting things, and there's a lot of things I love to do that bring me pleasure. So I'm just wondering if you'd like to comment on that aspect of it being a hindrance.
Well, it's a hindrance. It's a hindrance if we are identified with it and have to have it all the time. So I'm sitting in meditation, and my intention is to just be present here, and my mind is baking something, and I've got to get this for that, and there's I can't wait till I have the icing on that particular cake, and so then the mind is preoccupied with that desire at that time. So that's what it's that is, quote, distracting. It's a hindrance to clear seeing, because we become hypnotized by it. We become entranced by it. So it doesn't, when you do get that funny, I've got cerebellum cupcakes on the mind here. Had it's your fault. If I'm in meditation and can't wait to get to Multnomah Village to buy my dozen cerebellum cupcakes, then it's a bit of a distraction. Now, if I up level the game and I can notice, oh, here's desire, here's the image of getting out of my car, then I'm deeply in practice again. I'm right in the present moment, but I'm not lost in the desire, fantasies of satisfied desire.
So if you're imagining it, or if you're in the present moment while you get the cupcakes,
that's the goal. That's the intention, to be in the present moment, to be doing what you're doing.
I get it. So the thing is, shopping has been an off and on thing, and I don't. I usually get what I want, and now I'm not getting what I want all the time. And,
is it a relief?
Well, sometimes it's a relief, and sometimes it's a disappointment.
Yeah.
So I go back and forth with that, and I'm thinking, well, now how spoiled is that I've been getting what I want with all this lovely tasting stuff.
Right.
And now it's different, and that is so. It is, and I'm not trying to. I'm just defining it as being self-absorbed, but not like beating myself up about it.
Great. One of the practices that's very central in wise aspiration, one of the steps of the Eightfold Path, is renunciation, of deciding at times, well, there's a desire that I have, I'm not going to fulfill it. I'm going to see what it's like to fast from that.
Yes.
Which is, of course, in Islam, they have Ramadan. For a month, they fast all day. And in Catholicism, there's the whole Lent thing.
Oh, yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to share something today?
Robert,
I hear a voice.
this is Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
You touched on something there that really resonated with me, which is that, and I know you were joking, but it's all about me, right? This is why I like meditation.
But it's true.
And it's true. And this has really been a point of resistance for me,
Oh.
that I have really felt like I should be doing something more important,
Oh.
right, than
Uh-huh.
gazing at my own navel. And so I've kind of made some peace with the concept of finding, straightening myself inwardly in order to straighten myself outwardly as well.
Yeah.
But it's still something that I really struggle with. It's still a hindrance for me, and I think it may touch a little bit or relate a little bit to what Gail was saying about being self-absorbed as well. So I'm just curious to hear your comments on that.
What pops to mind is a story that Jack Cornfield told. He was a monk in Thailand for 7 years during the Vietnam War. And from Wat Pananachot, where he was, one could hear the bombs dropping in Cambodia. That town Ubon Lachatani was one of the 2 U.S. air bases from which they flew into Cambodia. And he had friends come through who were on their way to Vietnam, to Hanoi, to help the Vietnamese, American friends. And they really got on his case and said, what's the matter with you? There's people dying. You should be helping. And he got a little bit poked. And he went to Achan Cha, and Achan Cha said something like, there have to be islands of sanity, because it's here that we discover what's really true and what's really important. And then Jack then went on. He had 7 years that he was completely selfish, in a way, self-focused. And then there's been 45 years of writing books and being of incredible service. And so there's a pattern that many people who make a big moral, ethical, spiritual impact on the world follow a pattern of withdrawal and return. That we withdraw in order to take care of ourselves. We withdraw in order to develop insight into the nature of the self. We withdraw in order to get inspiration. And then we return and we make our contribution. And so that's one way to look at it. And the truth is, if you take time every day, my prayer always is that a person will get sufficiently understanding of it that you'll take an hour a day, a minimum of an hour a day, to withdraw, and you'll get it back 2 or 3 times over in efficiency. And in for instance, if I withdraw and I discover my own irritability or my own greediness or whatever, then every interaction I have with another human is different, because I'm more aware of this one. So it really is, I deeply believe, I don't know that I need deeply in that, the most important thing any of us can do for world peace is our own meditation. For any of the problems of the world, the most important thing we can do is to deal with ourselves, because then the wake we leave behind us is different. Is that making sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Every interaction is different. I noticed it even this morning. I was in a pretty spacious place when I came into my tent this morning. I'd had, an hour and a half or more to just sit and be. But then through this interaction and sitting in community, I feel my heart is more open and I feel more joyous. Now that's going to affect my whole day.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Sometimes I get impatient.
Wow. I've never experienced impatience. Yeah.
I want to hurry up, so I can get enlightened and go out and do good things.
I really understand. And you know where patience comes from?
Mm-hmm.
Constantly consciously suffering impatience.
Right.
Which sucks, of course. But
It totally sucks.
but when you're impatient, it's like, I want to be somewhere. It's a form of greed often. I want to be there. I'm not here. But the more we can observe that, then we become patient.
Right. And
Yeah.
form of not good enough.
Right. So hurry up and get enlightened.
Okay, I'll work on it.
You have a week and a half.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you very much.
My pleasure. Ross, hi.
Hey, so as you know, I have autism and ADHD, and I meditate a lot, and I have a lot of difficulties because I have a hard time processing emotions. I don't really know. I just feel a feeling of tension and then tightness and heaviness in the chest that comes and goes, which I guess are a bunch of emotions that kind of come at once. I try to focus on the breath. That seems to help. But what would you suggest when everything kind of comes at once a lot of the time? I just have a hard time sorting it out, and I start thinking, like, is it this, is it that? And I don't really process, emotions like regular people. I don't really know what they are a lot of the time. It just feels like discomfort, anxiety, depression, I guess. But I keep sitting, and I keep trying to come back to the breath, and that seems to stabilize it a bit. I just get really lost in, I guess, techniques and thinking and
Yeah.
wandering mind, everything kind of at once a lot of the time.
So in a way, you're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And when overwhelm is the primary experience, then simply resting in overwhelm
Yeah.
is and how to accept that, how to love yourself when that's happening, particularly given, knowing that you have a brain that operates differently, and it's painful. But I mean, what else is there to do other than to love that part of yourself? I know you do lots of other coping skills, but when you're sitting and when that's what's happening,
How do you, just like by accepting it, I guess. I get really literal. I'm like, how do you love yourself? I start thinking about it in a very like non-neurotypical way, like very like you'll open your heart and I'll be like imagining like
right?
literally like very literal thinking. That's the autistic thing.
It's
and trying to accept that, I guess. Run with it, but yeah, it's,
love and acceptance are synonyms.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll try that. I'll try to love it. Accept it.
Ross.
Thank you, Ross.
Ross, Karen.
Hi, Karen.
I can relate to what you were saying. I'm not autistic or anything, but sometimes when I'm feeling that way, I've just kind of like made my arms into a cradle as I'm sitting. And imagining me cradling myself.
Nice. Thank you.
Karen. That might be helpful. Thanks.
Hey, Robert, it's Russell.
Russell, yes.
I want to thank you for that image of an island of sanity and for the endorsement of withdrawal and then return, because what I realized was that what I struggle with is a chronic sense I'm not doing enough. That I am not doing enough. And
Yep.
that said, oh, maybe I am. If I can become an increasing island of sanity, that can be enough. And I also had a very interesting experience to relate. I was out running the dog. I think it was day before yesterday, and I encountered this gentleman who was running his dog, and we chatted from a socially safe distance. And he said something to me I found fascinating. He said he had taught his son, like during this time, he had taught his young son to play chess. And what he found was that when they played chess on the computer, his son could defeat him 5 out of 6 times. And when they played on a physical board, he could defeat his son 5 out of 6 times. And it got me thinking about the whole generation of people who are interwired and connected in a different way than people of my generation are, and how that may be in some ways like a meta consciousness. So I just wanted to share that thought.
What if there really is nothing to achieve? And in relative terms, what if you've already done enough? You've really done enough. And the rest is gravy. I know we know each other for decades, and you know of me the desperate attempt to be good enough and do enough to actually be worthy of being loved, because that was the crucible I was born into. And I mean, what if we really have already done plenty? And that piece of costuming, that piece of personality, is now it's an artifact of a previous time. I have little flashes of that every now and then, mostly in meditation, that there really is nothing for me to do. And then, of course, when we realize that the self is a phantom, then there really is nothing to do at all anyway, and everything that's done is gravy again.
I just wanted to chime in that I always think of the myth, the red shoes, with that, right? And the way that you can yang yourself to death unless you let a little yin in.
Yes, thank you.
I just want to say thank you, Robert, as so often happens, your words have touched my heart. The tears have come.
Yeah. I love you, my dear old friend. Friend of old. Well, I'm noticing we're at almost 10 after. Carmen, you have your hand raised. Please, let's come to you before we go.
Sure. I just
Hi.
wanted to reflect on the. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay. I just want to reflect. First of all, thank you, Robert. This about the 5 hindrance, and and making our contribution. There's so much going on in today's Sangha, so I really appreciate everyone's feedback. One thing that I've been noticing the last few meditations is the emotional pain and the physical pain, and so I've been focusing on the hindrance. When I bring that to awareness, the emotional pain then goes away, and then I'm left, because I couldn't distinguish between emotional and physical pain. They both, and so I was having difficulty through meditation through that, and then all of a sudden hindrance. I'm worried, this whole COVID thing, and so I just kind of focused on that. That went away. Then I was left with one pain, which was the physical pain, and all of it stems around the heart.
Huh.
With my 2 stents, and then what is, and then all of a sudden, by focusing on the breath, and I just wanted to say that the putting words to those feelings, and being able to just dissolve, and all of a sudden everything went away, and I was back to the breath. And anyway, I just wanted to mention that the hindrances are huge. They're deal with them every day, and so I want to thank you.
I love that word, dissolve. That when the attachment to things dissolves, there's just space. There's just that which knows. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Well, is there anybody sitting with anything that really wants to be said before we go? This conversation is just really getting going, but we do have to go. I have to go. Anybody else? Well, let's end in a slightly different way today, a very different way. I've been doing this with my Dhammapada group on Wednesday nights. In Islam, there are practices that are called the 101 Beautiful Names of God. At the PIMC, in the main Dharma hall, if you look from the altar toward the door, on the left-hand side there's a goat skin with Arabic writing on it, and that's from Rumi's tomb in Konya. And it says, it's the beginning of most Islamic prayer, which is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We begin in the name of Allah, whose names are compassion and mercy. and then there's another 99 beautiful names of God. And the one that I'd like to share with you today is Yashakur. And it's done in greeting or in parting. We put our hands on our hearts and then go, Yashakur. And the meaning is, quite beautifully, how exquisitely God is manifesting to me in this moment as you. Isn't that, I just love that. So we do I'll open it up to so we can all be heard. Oh, unmute all. There we go. So hands to the heart. And then it's a very loving, gentle Yashakur.
And I thought about it and I thought, well, what if
Yashakur. Yashakur. See you tomorrow, dear friends. What are you going to do today with your one wild and precious life? Till soon.
the guy that's going to be there at about 9:30?
Goodbye, dear friends. To join us on Zoom, go to portlandinsight.org and find the online classes, and the Zoom link is there. Be well.